Hey, so we're back again with the Polyend play, and you've probably been in this position where you built a nice little loop of music, but you really want to extend it out and you're just getting stuck in there. And that's where I think the Polyend play's got some really nice features. We'll talk about how to extend a single loop into like the 64 steps and using some of the really nice features of the Polyend play to have something that we can play a lot more live and moving forward. So instead of talking about, let's get straight into it. Alright, we're back with the Polyend play, and this video is all about extending out the loop, and I think any genre to talk about loops is some sort of techno. So right now I've taken the techno pack and just generated this little doobie just using some of the fill tools and just made an interesting little bass line. But with any sort of techno, it can be quite repetitive, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background, and a really good use case to show how we can extend out a little 16 bar loop like this out into something quite longer, where we can use extension of to 64 steps. We can look at adding variants. We can use some of the randomized features up here and start playing and live recording to create longer patterns that we hope to expand out so we can start making our song. So first things first is I want to start transitioning this out into a longer piece, and there I can create some variants. But if we were to just jump in here and do that, we can see that we've just added our 64 steps, but we've got 3 lots of nothing and our first bar. So one thing I wanted to highlight first is when you use this selection tool here and select it, it actually selects the entire of the amount here. So if you're going to copy and paste patterns across and you want to use that select tool, like this snare track here. So if I was to just select this pattern here, I'm going to put that into my copy buffer, and then when I hold shift and extend out the loop, I can come into these second patterns. So that one, I can go paste and paste a new snare track, go to the next one, paste, go to the next one, and then we can paste. So that's extended out the snare track. So we should see it, there we go. And then it goes into the 4th one. So it's just one thing to keep in mind, because when you select, it does select the entire pattern. So with that in mind, there are 2 main ways I really like expanding out the loop. One being generative, so like creating up like conditional triggers using the chance tool to be able to manipulate the voice. So like say we go up to here and say like play 2, skip 3, we can have it so it changes some of the notes, but then we're also expanding out the sound using the full 64 steps available to us. Now, the way I like to manage this is I usually just copy, expand, and then make changes. Copy, paste, and make changes. So what that means is, this is more from my tracker point, is we copy this, we bring it across, we make a change here. We can copy this one and bring it across again to make another change. And then we take this one here and then we can paste it here and then make another change. So we have a full 64 step, all based around the current information that we have, but we augment it in different ways to create much more of a longer sequence. All right, so what does that mean when we do it in practice? It means I'm going to copy everything. So holding shift and selecting these 2 points on both sides and then hitting copy. All that information is in the copy buffer. And then I can just draw out this line, holding up here, go shift, paste. And that's brought that information from the first stage into the second stage. And this is where I can start augmenting things. So I know that this one's my bass line, so I might do some things to augment it by like maybe shifting up a note. So we could do. So if we listen to just that. So it just adds a little bit of variance. So another thing that I do to try and like extend out the loop when it comes to here is I usually change up the snare just a little bit, add a bit of flavor. I might make a reverse snare. So what I'm going to do is hold till it flashes and bring in a point there, and then you shift and select. So when I'm controlling the parameters up here, it's editing that. And for that reverse snare, I'm just going to do this. I showed this in the drum video. Want something a little bit quick. So if I just solo that, probably give it a little bit more tweaking. It's pretty close. Cool. So what you really want to keep in mind is that we don't need to do much to actually augment the sound enough to make it interesting for the listener. Like we've established our patterns and it creates this nice rhythm for the user or listener that they've got in their space, but we're just adding little bits of flavor in the background to change the sound. So it's like, sometimes I'll do it on like 2 and 4. Sometimes I'll use the first bar and the third bar. They stay the same, but the other two have different versions of the same thing. And then sometimes it might be like it plays through 3 times. And then this one I might do that for. On the last bar, it plays a higher tone. So there's different ways to flavor it up. Right now I've done that. So what I want to do is I'm just going to expand it out again. And then what I want to do, come back, select it all again, copy, come back over here and paste. So now that we've got that original pattern in pattern 3, I'm just going to come in again and then deselect, hold, shift and paste, and that's going to paste in this final version. And this is probably where I get a little bit more crazy and muck around. So what I might do is just shift and select a few notes, maybe just jump them up a little bit and see how that sounds. We'll just leave it running, and then this like might copy. So it is techno, so there's like little changes here and there, but it starts building out our sound. Cool, so we've got the entire 64 steps being used. We've added some like flavor to it. This is where we can start adding some randomizers to make it sound a little bit different. Like with that bass line, I might do a live record, but for the drums, like especially these hi-hats, if I just solo them, they're kind of hitting the same. So I want to add some variance, especially with the type of sound that's coming through. So I might just go sample and folder and just add a tiny bit on top of that. So we'll just save that. And then what we might do as well is add some texture. And then if we add that in context with everything, so it's just changed everything up in a way that adds more variance, but it's still around that same type. Like one thing I really like how the Polyend play handles that sort of randomness feature is, I said in the original video, is that it'll pick a number and then expand out from it. So it's not like pure random where it's just like scattering, just picking something from the file and throwing in there. You do have some control to add some like little bit of variance. So if you've got a bunch of samples, we'll just deselect that and say, we're putting in like a hi-hat. If you keep your hi-hats organized by using that numbering system, but like have the shorter, sort of simpler hi-hats at one end and then having more complex stuff on the other, you're definitely going to be able to use that randomizer to more of an effect. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Now with that bass line, like I do like a good bass line, but I do like one where it actually sounds like someone's actually controlling the value. All right, so with live recorded set, what I can do is as it's playing through, I can start middling with the value and start adding some of that sort of handheld control feel. So. And then if we play that, hit live record, we can actually see that number moving back and forward. So it's got that more live play feel, but it's saved inside the block. So when it comes to doing that sort of stuff, make sure that you've got the right value kind of set where you want it and start playing with it, because when it comes to undoing, it does get a little bit difficult, but really that creates some more dynamics. And if we bring everything together, we can hear that element come in and then go out. And also the other thing I'm thinking about is how it's returning on itself. Like I tried to keep it around that 50 value, but I did let it dip down and come back up, because what I want when it hits the end of the chain and comes back again, you're not going to get like a really harsh jump. It's just going to make it a lot softer when it comes across. And especially when it comes to creating multiple patterns as we bridge it across, you want to try and keep similar sounds, sounding similar when it goes into the next block, and then it's not going to be like a very harsh transition. So I think now we're at a really cool point where we can start playing with the chance function to, one, change the value of some of these sounds. So they're always hitting on the grid. So we've got some really nice flavor, but we can change the note that's being played over time. but we can also create like ghost notes that come in through conditional trigs. So maybe it's like one every 4 playthroughs, it'll come in and do something different. And that's really going to extend out a bar. So the way I like doing this, I'm just going to stay on this one and maybe add some ghost notes in 1 and 2, just because they're the same. They might add some dynamics. So what I like doing, having it selected, I might just pick some random notes. So something like that. And then coming up to chance, what I want to do is play random note and say, yeah, we don't want to always. We could use chance. So every time it's playing, it's going to choose something different depending on the ratio you pick. So something quite low. It played some random notes there. But one thing I like is having it so it's like play and skip. So what it'll do is play it X amount of times and skip X amount of times. So play once, skip 4 times. One thing I like is probably play 2, skip 2, play 1, skip 1. These ones over here, it's like you start the track and then it's like so many times through. Because we're dealing with 64, I might just keep it skip 1, play 1, and then it's sort of going like every other bar, or 4 bars, it's going to do something different. So I've done it for this pattern here. What I might do is just transition over to this pattern, just clear the copy buffer by tapping shift, and then I'll just pick some other notes as well. And you do have access to a variety of different ways that those sounds can come in. So I'm just going to pick that random note, skip 1, play 1. So it's going to play our sound, but when it comes into the next version, which I'll skip ahead, it's going to do something different. So on that second playthrough, it's done a bit of a flavor jump, and really when it comes to playing longer extended stuff, like I could leave this running in the background and it's going to keep changing up depending on that, because we've got our original note set, that's going to play the main melody, but when those sort of chance-based elements come in using that note to jump up and down, that's going to take over. It's going to create something different, but it's also working within what was set up originally. So it creates some more dynamics there. And like I said before, with 1 and 3, I want to add some notes that don't exist, but they come in every now and again. So what I'm going to do is just select the first channel. So I'm going to do it here and maybe add one just there, just holding and pressing. And then I want to go shift select, and we're just going to have it play step, but using those same chance things as well. So when I was saying random note, it's going to pick a random note, play step, is it going to actually play? So if I got skip 1, play 1, if I play this, you're going to see the line come across, but you won't hear this note. But if I change that, say we play 1, you hear it. Just adds a little bit of extra stuff, but we can do some funky things like maybe add a different note to it, maybe add a different sample to it, but it's going to play along. But really when we start adding these sort of chance things, it does add a lot of flavor. So I'm going to probably do something like that. And then I might just copy it and just paste it in a few different areas, and then give these ones different ratios. So maybe that one plays 4. We'll just clear that, select that, and then we'll have that play skip, something like that. So these notes are going to come in and out whenever they feel like it, as the conditional trig said, but it also adds to the sound itself. Cool, so we've got 64 steps, and they've got a lot of elements in there that we can transition and create much longer chords than a 4-bar loop that we've got going. So this is the next point where I want to start talking about how we can start bridging this one pattern into something else. So say I want to change the bass line and just want it into a different version. This is where variations come through. So what I can do is I'm just going to hold that until it flashes and moves across. So now I've got that copied across, and like every channel has its variation. If you want to do it per pattern, so each lane is its own, like you don't have to deal per lane, it's the entire track. If you come up to here and go to settings, I believe it is variations page, you can have separate tracks or all tracks, so they're all synced together and you can create different frames of the sound, but usually I leave it on the separate tracks just because that's the way I like working. So I've got that selected, I'll move across, and then we'll come back out of here. It's going to be the same sound, but I want to select all and say I want to make a change, so we just increase it up by 5. So it's playing right now. If we come back to the variations and then hit that one, it's going to wait. And then it's gone back to its original sound. But all those conditional triggers are still playing at the same time. So if you're more into that performance way of playing, there's going to be a video for you later in this series. But this is the way that you can start augmenting the sounds and start being able to play live. So you pretty much just have like this view going, and then you can start pressing all the buttons to make your set. So that is about variations, but the other way that we can create variants with our track is if we come over to pattern, we can actually have all those blocks. So pretty much every single one of these inside of a block, and then we can jump around with those blocks. So like the way I showed that you can have variations on all tracks, this is the same sort of setup. But what we can do, I'm just going to copy and paste by holding and pressing. It's going to copy it to the second part. And same thing, if I come into here and go back to the pattern, if I go variation like that, and then come over to here, and then I can put variation like that, and then they should remember where they were. So you can have different parts playing on different notes. So if you want to stay in that variations page, make every single pattern that you want, and then start coming into this mode here and start playing around. Like you can definitely have it so you can see the tracks that you're working on. Like I only use 4 tracks for this one, so I could have it like that and then have all my patterns down here. So you have like full control and split it up like that. But I'm going to leave that more for the actual video that's going to be about mastering and putting it out there and part of that performance mode. But this one really needs to understand the different dynamics that I want to try and create when I'm making this type of music. So I was getting a little bit ahead of myself, but really when it comes to these patterns, what I'm trying to get you to think about is the different dynamics when it comes to making music, because there's 4 major blocks that I really think about when it comes to like the arrangement area. So like there's parts that have high energy, there's parts that are low energy, and then there's like the A-B sort of mix. So I create like 2 different patterns that are completely different but sound the same. So it's like, say with this one, this is like part A. So if I play, and then if I go here, that would be part B. So with part A and part B, let's say I start mixing this one up to make like a part B sound. So really on the play, like we can start using some of those generative features. So this bass line, I want to change that to something else. So I can just come up here and maybe we'll just change the sample first. So I might just throw a randomize on here for the sample and folder just to give it a bit of variance. So if we just solo that. And then if we listen to that in context. So it's a little bit more muted, but we do have that part B, and then maybe we change the sample for this one too. Something with a similar energy. Cool, so we have to listen to this in context. So I've got part A, hit play. We've got the original tone. And then when it kicks in, we've got something completely different, but all those conditional triggers are still going along in sequence. So if we say skip one, play one, because it's gone through one pattern, it's come into the next one, all those ones are still going to continue on from that initial start point. So that's something to consider. But now that we've got a part A and a part B, what I like to do is create. So it's pretty easy when it comes to live playing. Like I can start with the drums, maybe bring in the hi-hat, add one of those spicy hits, let ride out, let come in again, and then we can bring in the snare. So I can work up towards building the most intense version of the song, and that's when it comes to part A and part B. You want to sort of fill out all the tracks with everything that's going to work together. That's why I wanted to show off the drums video and the melody video, because it does allow you to fill up all those tracks and then you can start taking things away. So it's all that subtractive sequencing. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to turn all this off so we can maybe edit the patterns themselves so we can take things away. So with part A, I'm just going to make a copy there. So now I've got a lower energy version, then we've got the high energy version, and then we'll just jump into here. So what I'm going to do, pattern, and probably the first thing I might do is start taking away some of these hi-hats. So if I maybe leave that one in. And then I just got to go through and do that for each one. So it's always going to be maybe do something like that. It just makes it easy because all you got to do is actually just push the button that you want to change the sound. And I'm picking different notes as well because I still want that longer progression. So it's like it's not just a sequence, we have an extended version. Maybe cut it right back at the end. So if we listen to just the hi-hats. So compared to everything else, we can start subtracting it back. So I might do that with the kick drum as well. We'll just get rid of this 4 on the floor one here. I like that. Just a little bit of flavor at the end. There was a reverse snare, so we'll take them out. And with this bass line too, I might cut that back as well. So I just want to go through each one. Maybe and go into second pattern. And then what I might do is just tone out this pad sound here. So say if we were to live play this now, so we got this low energy version, then we want to build up into the high energy version. So I might start with the kick. So we've got that 4 on the floor, maybe bring in those hi-hats, which are a little bit more spaced out. Give a hint of the bass line, bring in that pad sound, bring all the elements in, and then we make that transition, and then everything comes in. So we got that low energy version and it's coming into the high energy version. So I'm really happy right now because I have my 4 blocks. So we have low energy version, high energy version. As you can see, I haven't done that one yet, but you don't need me to do the same thing all over again. These are all the tools that I use to get from a little 16 bar loop and expand it right out. So it's creating variance, it's creating interest, like we have that like main melody, but we're augmenting it in ways to keep the listener's interest as we go through the actual song. So the next video, what I want to talk about is how we take those 4 blocks and putting it into a full arrangement, and then we can go about hitting shift play and then having the song go out live. We can record it. So we'll talk a little bit about more the mixing and mastering as well. But this is a really good point to start fleshing out your ideas and how to expand it from that original bar into something a lot more. So I hope this one's given you a bit of food for thought, because really they are my tools, and this is how I approach any sort of loop to expand it out, whether it's on the play or any device that I really use. But this will get you a long way to get you to that A-B point and really start using subtractive sequencing, because we usually end up making the best version of our song and just bringing it back. So bring those elements back to create something that's really unique and interesting that we can live play, which we will be talking in a future video. But the next video in this series is we're going to be focusing on how do we take those little bars and make a nice strip of music that we can play, and then look at some of the other features around it. So I hope you did enjoy this one. And if you did, definitely give it that thumbs up, because it does tell the algorithm to point this to other people that probably got the play. They're looking for ways to use it and just getting into it. So this is a series that I've been working on for them. And if you do have any comments or queries, because I do feel like I rushed through a few things, feel free to leave them down below. I do go down there and try and talk and have a good discussion about the play itself. So if you're looking for more Polyend play content, I do have a bit of a playlist going on this channel. So if you do decide to go check one of those out, I look forward to seeing you next time.